Hello and welcome. I'm Catalina Marchant de Abreu and you're watching W News. Broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios, these are our top stories. Protests resume in Tehran as more talks between Iran and the US are set for this week. Violence erupts across Mexico as the country's most wanted drug baron is killed during a military operation. An armed intruder is shot dead by Secret Service agents after attempting to enter President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. And British actor Robert Arabiya beats Hollywood's elite to win Best Actor at this year's BAFTAs. Iran may be ready to strike a deal with the United States, with talks set for Thursday, as protests resume in the capital city of Tehran. They follow threats of a military attack from President Trump as U.S. forces are sent to the Middle East. Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has said the president was questioning why Iran has not yet capitulated. Take a listen.
Use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do, and yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place. They've been enriching well beyond the number that you need for civil nuclear. It's up to 60%. They're probably a week away from having industrial grade bomb-making material, and that's really dangerous.
Let's get the reaction of Professor Scott Lucas from the Department of International Politics at the Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Professor Lucas, I ask you hence the same question. What's stopping Tehran from capitulating, as he says, Steve Witkoff? It's under economic strain, facing protests and staring at major U.S. military buildup. So why hasn't it blinked?
Let me ask you and your viewers, if a foreign power put warships and fighter jets off the coast of Saudi Arabia, if they said to you, unless you give up your energy programs and your domestic autonomy, we will bomb you, would you capitulate? And I think the answer for the Saudi royal family would probably be no. So why the real estate developer Steve Witkoff, who's also Donald Trump's envoy, would think that the Iranian regime would simply surrender and not even try to negotiate on terms that meant it could retain a civil nuclear program, it's beyond me. I think it was a very clumsy way of admitting what we all know, and that is that the U.S. has put this force off the coast of Iran at the same time the talks are going on to tell the Iranians, give us what we want, which at this point appears to be zero enrichment, appears to be also discussion of Iran's ballistic missile program, without any commitments on sanctions removal. Give us what we want, or we're going to go to war with you. And the Iranian regime has been under a great deal of pressure. It's been under economic pressure for years. It has faced military challenges for decades, including its rivalry with Israel and at times the Gulf states. And it now has serious domestic issues with Iranians who want rights and reforms, but it's still a regime that is relatively intact. It's not like the military and other groups are splitting away from the supreme leader. So I think the Trump camp, while they have all this force assembled off the coast of Iran, really are at a loss where they want to go next.
And Professor Lucas, after a deadly January crackdown, we've seen students are back on the streets over the weekend. What do these demonstrations tell us about the state of public sentiment in Iran today?
Well, I think it tells us what I've long heard from friends inside Iran, and I'm privileged to have many of them, which is the idea of fire under the ashes, that they do want change, whether that's reforms, whether that's actually a replacement of the regime. They want more political, social space. They want to be able to live without intimidation, without the fear of being arrested or killed. And despite the regime killing thousands, maybe tens of thousands of Iranians last month, people will still make this known. Now, I must emphasize at this point that these, unlike the protests that started in late December, which started in the markets and in the bazaars, these look like they're just at the university campuses for the moment. It doesn't look like we've got a widespread movement across all sectors of Iranian society like we did have last month. But it is a symptom that Iran is never a case where the opposition is in a place to get rid of the regime, but it's never in a place where the regime has completely put down the Iranian wish to try to have respect for their rights and for justice.
And with the 40-day mourning period over protests that are gathering momentum and U.S. forces that we see massing up in the region, does the government, you think, Professor Lucas, will it double down on repression, or do you think it'll act more carefully now?
Well, I think the regime made it very clear last month, specifically on January 8th and 9th, after the late son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, had called for protest on the streets because he would like to return to power. The regime made clear it's not going to tolerate widespread protest, and it will unleash military force to put this down. No one should be under any illusion of that. At the same time, I think the idea that a U.S. attack on the regime would open up the way for the protesters is badly misguided, because as soon as the U.S. attacks, the regime will try to rally support by going to Iranians and saying, look, we're not your enemy. The U.S. and Israel are. We saw that during Israel's 12-day war last June, when the regime was able to command support and push back protest. And I think if the Trump camp were foolish enough to go in with widespread airstrikes, it will actually undercut those Iranian protests.
And continuing on the topic of protests, how might these renewed protests inside Iran actually influence the government's willingness to negotiate or not with the U.S.?
Well, right now, the Iranian regime is just trying to buy time. They do not want to be attacked by the United States. They do not want to face a case where the mass protests put them under threat of being removed. So they're going to say, look, we'll talk, we'll negotiate. That's what was repeated by the foreign ministry today. That's why we have an announcement of another round of talks, which I believe are going to be in the Gulf. How much time can the Iranian regime buy? Not only versus the United States, but versus its own people. I think you go back to the fundamental factor that triggered the mass protest in December, and that's the Iranian economy. Given the plummeting currency, given the high rate of inflation, given the collapses of key banks in Iran, given the mismanagement of the economy, I think if you have another shock, another economic shock that affects many Iranians, that's what will really spur the protest, even with the threat of repression.
And Iran and the U.S. will meet for another round, as we've been reporting, of talks on Thursday again. So what do you think, Professor Lucas? Do you think there will be a deal, or do you think we're closer to peaceful resolution, perhaps? Or do you think we're closer to a broader conflict?
Right now, we're in a limbo. We've had talks about talks. That's what we've had so far. Whether or not we have got a defined agenda, that's something I'll be looking for on Thursday. Whether that agenda gets to the heart of issues around nuclear enrichment, around whether or not Iran's ballistic missile program will be discussed, and around verification through the International Atomic Energy Agency, as well as the issue of sanctions. Let's see if those are on the table. I think the Iranians would like to put those on the table. I think they do want to find a way out of this. Is the Trump administration actually going to be willing to come off of the position of zero enrichment Are they going to insist that Iran has to give up its ballistic missile program or limit it? Because if they do either of those, these talks will go nowhere.
It looks like in any negotiation, someone's going to have to compromise, right? Thank you, Professor Scott Lucas, for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank your viewers.
Asian economies are scrambling to respond to a global 15% tariff set by the United States. President Trump announced the interim move after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down his tariff program last week. India has delayed planned talks with Washington, while South Korea is warning exporters of stiffer competition and uncertainty about refunds. Chris Gilbert reports.
Korea is moving quickly to address the fallout. Government officials gathered in Seoul on Monday after Washington imposed a temporary 15% tariff on imports following the Supreme Court's block on Trump's tariff program.
If this global tariff of 15% is imposed, changes will be expected in the relative competitive conditions of our companies. The private sector needs to work together to secure our companies' export competitiveness and diversify our markets.
The stakes are high for export-dependent Korea. The auto, manufacturing, chip and pharmaceutical industries are exposed to any change in trade conditions. Seoul says semiconductor exports are not subject to the new duties, but uncertainty remains over possible additional measures and whether tariffs already paid under previous higher rates may be refunded. The government says it will keep negotiating to limit the damage.
The government will continue to engage in constructive talks with the United States so that the impact on our companies is kept to a minimum.
India is taking a cautious approach. A planned trade delegation to Washington has been postponed, a sign of the unpredictability of the situation. Officials had hoped to finalize an interim deal to reduce steep U.S. tariffs on Indian exports.
We are preparing a formal draft agreement. We estimate that the formal agreement will be signed by mid-March.
India supplies the U.S. with seafood, agricultural products, leather goods, medicines, textiles, and diamonds. Any change in tariffs could ripple across millions of jobs, and officials say uncertainty is cause for a pause. No new date has been set for talks. With Washington signaling that further tariffs could come, Asian economies are bracing for a period of instability. Chris Gilbert, Arabiya English.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Vladimir Zelensky says Vladimir Putin has started World War III. Ukraine's president made the statement as the fourth anniversary of the war approaches. Overnight, at least 2 people have died in Odessa from a Russian drone attack. The North Korean Workers' Party has chosen Kim Jong-un to continue as leader of the ruling party. The Kim family has ruled the country since the 1940s. Jong-un took control after his father's death in 2011 and has invested heavily in their nuclear program. A group of European diplomats have met with a senior board of peace official over peace efforts in Gaza. Nikolai Mladenov, who was chosen by Trump to manage the group, will meet with EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas and foreign ministers. And New York City has banned most non-essential travel as a major blizzard descends on the state. Over 5,000 flights in and out of the U.S. have been canceled today, and schools are closed too after 22 inches of snow fell on the East Coast. An armed intruder has been fatally shot after entering the perimeter of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. The suspect, who has been named as 21-year-old Austin T. Martin, was carrying a shotgun and a fuel can when he was stopped and killed by Secret Service agents on Sunday morning. The president was in Washington, D.C. when the incident occurred. And I'm now joined by our Washington correspondent, Sara Firth. Sara, what exactly happened at Mar-a-Lago and how did the Secret Service respond to this breach?
So, Catalina, here's what we know at this point. In the early hours of Sunday morning, you had this man managed to breach the first security perimeter. We're told going some 20 to 30 yards inside the ground. So he didn't get very far before you then had security stop him. Now, we've been told by local authorities that he was asked by two Secret Service agents and a Palm Beach County deputy to drop what he was holding. We're told he was holding a shotgun and a gas canister, at which point we're told that he, when confronted and ordered to drop what he was holding, took up what has been described as a firing position. Now, the Secret Service agents and the deputy then opened fire. The man was killed. Secret Service saying that there is going to be an investigation into this. And important to note, Catalina, as you said there, that President Trump and the First Lady were not at that Mar-a-Lago property in Florida. They were here in Washington, D.C., at the White House over the weekend. Very lucky, because they very often do frequent Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. So, yeah, they were in Washington, D.C. And we've already heard from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, saying that, praising the Secret Service for acting what she describes as being quick and decisively in the face of this armed intruder.
And what do we know of this intruder, this man involved? Are the investigators any closer to actually understanding a motive?
Well, we don't have much in the way of confirmed facts at this point. What law enforcement sources are being reported as having told people is that there is a man that you can see that picture on screen identified as Austin Tucker Martin. Now, he is a 21-year-old from North Carolina. What we've been told is that just hours before he was reported missing on the Sunday, and now we have yet to get the confirmation from police that that is indeed the man who carried out this intrusion, but that is what is being reported. Now, police investigators, they're going to be looking at this moment as that investigation gets underway into what exactly his motive was. We heard in the statement put out by Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, she described this as a crazy person. Look, we don't have much in the way of information right now, but certainly law enforcement officials will be investigating what the motive behind this was. Was it politically motivated? Was it a mental health issue? Those are details we don't yet know, but we are seeing reports here in the American media that law enforcement sources have been reporting this as Austin Tucker Martin, 21 years old, from North Carolina. And I can tell you, Catalina, as well, that you had the White House press secretary also scoring a bit of a political point, saying that she can't believe that Democrats shut down the department. She's referring to Homeland Security and the partial shutdown. Important to note, of course, that it's the FBI that will be leading the investigation, so not Homeland Security involved in this instance, but she was in some ways appearing to imply that perhaps the Democrats had contributed in some ways to this with the shutdown of the partial shutdown affecting Homeland Security. But look, the investigation very much ongoing right now. And of course, this isn't the first time that President Trump has faced these types of threats on his life, but one of the most recent, and we've seen the Secret Service step in very, very rapidly. Law enforcement officials, they are framing this as a successful operation. They say, okay, yes, the person managed to breach that first perimeter, get inside Mar-a-Lago, that will be being looked at. But then very quickly, you had him identified, you had a response, you had action taken.
And as you just mentioned, Sarah, because how significant is this incident in the wider context of the various security threats that President Trump has faced in recent years, including death threats?
Yes, Catalina, look, it's an ongoing discussion here in the United States at the moment in 2024, of course, in the lead up to the election. You had President Trump facing that assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. You saw everyone in the stands ducking. The president leaving the stage with his agents around him, scrambling to protect him. He had that famous moment now where he had his fists in the air and he was saying he would never surrendered just moments after that assassination attempt took place, and blood down the side of his face where it appeared he'd had his ear grazed. It could have ended very, very differently. And we've seen other waves of political violence as well. You had the murder of Charlie Kirk. He was a political commentator here in the United States. So this is a discussion that is being had about on both sides of the aisle, right, from Democrats to Republicans, about how you lower the political temperature. Worth pointing out, though, that there was that political point scoring in the immediate aftermath of this latest attempt, it seems, on President Trump's life, with that armed intruder entering Mar-a-Lago but being very quickly shot dead. And the investigation ongoing right now, Catalina, to try and establish exactly what that motive was.
And Sarah, we did hear President Trump speaking earlier. Did he mention anything about this attempt at his Mar-a-Lago residence?
What we heard President Trump discussing today, he was at this event for the angel families, he calls them, families of people who have lost loved ones in incidents and attacks that have involved illegal immigrants here in the country. Now, what we were looking at is President Trump's announcement and details of the fact that tomorrow, on Tuesday, you have the State of the Union address. Everyone's going to be watching that moment very, very closely to see what President Trump says. We haven't heard much in detail by way of what he thinks. You know, usually he's taking to social media when it comes to what happened with this assassination attempt. But as I said, the White House framing this really as a successful law enforcement effort with Secret Service very quickly identifying a threat, neutralizing, as they say, that threat, the person being shot dead, waiting to hear more from investigators on that. But President Trump at that event today for those families, also looking ahead to tomorrow's State of the Union. And of course, we'll keep you well updated on all the developments with that, Catalina.
You'll keep us well informed as always, Sara Firth. Thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at the top business news. Gold prices have climbed to a 3-week high amid uncertainty over tariffs in the U.S. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision to strike down President Trump's tariffs have pressured the dollar and pushed investors to the safety of bullion. Johnson Matthey has agreed to cut the sale price of its Catalyst Technologies business to Honeywell, sending its share prices tumbling over 17%. The British chemicals company now expects to sell the unit for £1.33 billion, down from the previously agreed £1.8 billion. And turning to sport now. Benfica footballer Gianluca Prestiani has been provisionally suspended by UEFA following allegations he racially abused Real Madrid's Vinicius Jr. The 20-year-old Italian has been banned for 1 match while investigation continues. Arsenal have beat Tottenham 4-1 in the North London Derby. That leaves Tottenham just 4 points above the Premier League relegation zone. And the U.S. won gold in the men's ice hockey for the first time in 46 years. They won 2-1 against Canada, concluding the 2026 Winter Olympics. Hollywood came to London last night for this year's BAFTA Awards. A-listers Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet have walked the red carpet before the ceremony, both nominated for Best Actor. But it was British actor Robert Aramayo who won the award for his role in I Swear, and Irish actress Jessie Buckley who took away Best Actress for her part in Hamnet. Take a listen to them both.
Robert Aramayo from I Swear.
Last time I was at BAFTA, I dropped the award, so hopefully this goes better. Thank you so much for this. It means the world to me. I can't believe that.
Thank you.
The BAFTA goes to Jessie Buckley.
This is nuts. Like, this really does belong to the women, past, present, and future, that have taught me and continue to teach me how to do it differently. You are all just radical, and you're doing it for the naughty girls, and I'm in awe of all your incredible performances. Thank you.
Let's go live to London now to speak to showbiz reporter at the Daily Mail, Stephanie Takyi. Thank you for joining us as always. Stephanie, what a night. Was anyone expecting that win from Robert Aramayo?
Catalina, nobody was expecting it. Talk about it being the year of the underdog. I have to admit, there was this audible gasp of shock and disbelief when his name was called out. You know, we certainly thought we had Leonardo in the house. We had Timothy Chalamet in the house. We thought it's definitely going to go to one of the big Hollywood heavyweights, but it wasn't about that this year. I think the Brits were staying true to our homegrown talent, and that is obviously Robert Aramayo this year. Aramayo this year. And the reason why, he done such a powerful performance in I Swear. You know, a lot of film critics say that it was one of the best films of last year. And I think for the BAFTAs this year and for its members, it is about nurturing homegrown talent. I think for the BAFTAs over the past few years, there's been a lot of criticism that how they're always kind of bowing down to Hollywood and following the American trends. And I think it's quite fascinating that this year they just went in the opposite direction. And to say how much of a big win this is, I Swear is not even up for any Oscar nominations. So definitely Robert is a name that we will be hearing about in the future, and he's done his city proud. He's from Hull, so he's shown it can be done. You can beat Hollywood every once in a while.
And unlike Robert Aramayo, Jessie Buckley, perhaps not such a surprise. She's been the favorite from the start. So could we see an Oscar for her too?
I think Oscar's definitely coming for Jessie. I think yesterday, what was cemented last night is how lovable she is as an actress and as a person, you know, dedicating that BAFTA to fellow actresses. I think it makes people love her more. But let's talk about her performance in Hamnet. It's powerful, it's thought-provoking, it's poignant. And we've seen that she's been on a winning streak so far at the Golden Globes and now at the BAFTAs. So I think it's definitely going to be her night at the Oscars, but she is going to face stiff competition from the likes of Kate Hudson, Emma Stone, who's always a favorite at the Oscars, and also Rose Byrne for her performance, If I Had Legs, I'll Kick You. So nothing's set in stone, as we're learning with award season, but I do think we are going to see her pick up an Oscar on March the 15th.
And one battle after another took home 6 awards, whereas Marty Supreme lost all 11 nominations. So how's that snub been taken?
Oh, this snub has been it's not been taken pretty well, to be honest. You know, we really thought that last night was going to be the night where Timothy Chalamet was going to be crowned king of the BAFTAs. And now, Catalina, if an actor loses in a big nomination like such as leading actor, you think that the film will pick up other production awards, which it didn't. To be up for 11 awards and not pick not one is quite sad. And it's, you know, people are saying that Timothy Chalamet is just basically on this really high drive just to win an Oscar, that the BAFTAs were kind of irrelevant to him. But still, he turns up with his girlfriend, Kendall Jenner, and you just think to yourself, it just wasn't his year. But I do think he will do really well at the Oscars.
And Stephanie, let's talk a little bit about that little incident, gaffe, whatever we want to call it, that happened last night, that the BBC have apologized after a Tourette's campaigner interrupted the ceremony. So what happened there, Stephanie?
Well, this has been the big news talking point over here in London today. Unfortunately, when Michael B. Jordan and his fellow co-presenter were on stage, there was somebody who was suffering from Tourette's in the audience who apparently, well, not even apparently, he said the N-word, which was quite audible for a lot of people to hear. The BBC had 2 hours where they could have edited that out before it went live on national TV last night, and they decided to air it as it is. while the presenter, Alan Cumming, apologized for it going out, and he explained that the person who said it had Tourette's and they have these involuntary tics, you know, they did apologize for the harmful language that had went out. But the big controversy here is that they managed to edit out a fellow winner saying Free Palestine, but they allowed this N-word to go out on air. So the BBC have a lot of pressure at the moment. They've had a lot of complaints over the past 3 months, including President Trump, who complained what he was edited following the January 6th riots. So there is a lot of pressure at the BBC, but it's not a good look on what is supposed to be our national broadcaster.
That's right, another controversy for the BBC now. But we also saw the return of the Prince and Princess of Wales last night, this after Andrew was taken to jail. So how did their appearance go down during the BAFTA?
Well, it was very unexpected. It's been 3 years since Kate and Will have come to the BAFTAs. He, of course, is the president of the BAFTAs. So it was nice to see them back on the red carpet. But you're right, this comes only a matter of days since Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested. So you can imagine it's all eyes on them, all on eyes on how they're feeling. Prince William gave an interview where he said he wasn't in a calm state. You know, the royal family like to keep up appearances, but what's going on in this country at the moment is not something they can ignore. But also, if we think about the last 3 years, you know, Kate faced the cancer battle. So it goes to show that the royals are trying to create a new chapter for them. But unfortunately, wherever they go, controversy is going to follow them at the moment. But Kate looked amazing. She was wearing this lovely pink Gucci gown. She had her hair all in waves. So one thing for sure, no matter what's going on in the royal family, Kate and William will always have the hearts of the public.
Stephanie Takyi, thank you so much for keeping us updated with all the showbiz news, as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
In Japan, messages of congratulations from around the world have been pouring in for Prime Minister Sanei Takaichi and her governing coalition following a big win in the country's general elections. The landslide victory paves the way for her proactive fiscal policy, an overhaul of Japan's defense capabilities aimed at countering China's military assertiveness. Chris Gilbert reports.
It was a stunning result for Japan's governing coalition, riding on the back of Prime Minister Sanei Takaichi's sky-high popularity ratings. The win caps a remarkable turnaround for Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party, following consecutive drubbings in national elections over the past 2 years. US President Donald Trump took to the platform X to congratulate Japan's leader, wishing her a success in passing her conservative, peace through strength agenda. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also hailed the win.
Boy, has she had a big victory today. She's going to have 2/3 majority in the upper house. President Trump endorsed her last week. She is a great ally, great relationship with the president. And when Japan is strong, the U.S. is strong in Asia.
Japanese stocks rose at the start of the week following Takaichi's win. Her proactive fiscal policy, emphasizing large-scale strategic investment, lifted investors' moods. The margin of victory gives the governing coalition a strong mandate to push through its policies.
The opposition parties have lost a large number of seats, so in that sense, it may make it easier for things to move forward. But at the same time, if an atmosphere emerges in which people feel they can't voice opposing opinions, then I think carelessness and arrogance will start to crop up. I sincerely hope the administration avoids this kind of situation.
Takaichi also plans to accelerate defense spending and expand Japan's missile and drone programs. She's taking a tough line against China as well as North Korea in what she sees as the threat they pose to stability in the Asia-Pacific. Observers are watching closely to see whether Japan's leader revises the country's pacifist constitution that's been in place since the end of World War II. Doing so will likely raise tensions with Beijing, and how Takaichi manages her relationship with China may define her foreign policy and Japan's defense posture for years to come. Chris Gilbert, Al Arabiya English.
Let's take another look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Flights were canceled and schools shut down in Mexico after violence erupted in the streets, following the killing of the country's most wanted drug baron. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, was the leader of a drug cartel, Jalisco New Generation, and died during an operation seeking his arrest. Cars were burnt and roads blocked as the cartel reaped revenge for the drug lord's death. Here's how local residents reacted. And now Vladimir Zelensky says Vladimir Putin has started World War III. Ukraine's president made the statement as the 4th anniversary of the war approaches. Overnight, at least 2 people have died in Odessa from a Russian drone attack. The North Korean Workers' Party has chosen Kim Jong-un to continue as leader of the ruling party. The Kim family has ruled the country since the 1940s. Jong-un took control after his father's death in 2011 and has invested heavily in their nuclear program. A group of European diplomats have met with a senior board of peace official over peace efforts in Gaza. Nikolai Mladenov, who was chosen by Trump to manage the group, will meet with EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas and foreign ministers. And New York City has banned most non-essential travel as a major blizzard descends on the state. Over 5,000 flights in and out of the U.S. have been canceled today, and schools are closed too after 22 inches of snow fell on the East Coast. A reminder of our top stories. Protests resume in Tehran as more talks between Iran and the U.S. are set for Thursday. Violence erupts across Mexico as the country's most wanted drug baron is killed during a military operation. An armed intruder is shot dead by Secret Service agents after attempting to enter President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. And British actor Robert Aramayo beats Hollywood's elite to win Best Actor at this year's BAFTAs. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours with W News Extra. Goodbye.